You don't have to. Okay. I still don't know this by heart. Welcome to Garden of the Spirit, a class studying apples from the orchard for the second time beginning after Pesach 2014. This class meets in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, the center of the universe, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Bas Moshe Margaret Vogel of blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contains selections of teachings of the Arizal, collected, based on the weekly Torah portion, superbly translated, collected, and explained by Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski. Don't know by heart. Okay. All right. So now we're on Parshas Beha-alot-cha, page 717, chapter 1. Here we go. When Hashem tells Moshe that Aaron should light the menorah in the Mishkan each day, there is some unusual wording. First, before we get to the unusual wording, the word we commonly translate candle, which is ner, actually means a light. In this case, it is the flame, oil, and wick. So it doesn't mean a candle the way we think of it, ner, but it could also be the flame or the everything there, the oil and so on. I have to see if it also could mean the bowl that holds the oil. I think so. Yeah, but the bowl that holds the oil, I think so. But that could be the light. Ner tamid could be just the light, eternal flame. Instead of saying, in this case, instead of saying when you light the candles, when Hashem talked to Aaron, it says when you cause the candles to rise or to ascend. It later says that the candles will shine. So even though here it says when you cause the candles to ascend, later it says that the candles will shine. Then it says Aaron will light, the candles will burn. In English, we say that. Then it says Aaron caused the candles to ascend. The center branch of the menorah is called Pnei HaMenorah, the face or the front of the menorah. Okay. So, yeah, please begin.
Beha-alot-cha, kindling character traits. Speak to Aaron and say to him, when you kindle the lamps, the 7 lamps are to shine toward the front of the candelabrum. And Aaron did thus. He kindled the lamps toward the front of the candelabrum. The lamps of the candelabrum, the 7-branched menorah of the Holy Temple, were all in a straight line. The front of the menorah is thus interpreted to mean the lamp situated on top of its middle shaft. The word used for kindle literally means caused to ascend. The Arizal will explain why 2 separate terms are used for the burning of the lamps, kindling and shining. Note as well that in Hashem's command, Aaron is only required to make sure the 7 lamps shine toward the middle lamp of the candelabrum, whereas in describing how he fulfilled the command, we are told that he also kindled them facing toward the front of the candelabrum. This too will be explained. In the course of this discussion, many points touched upon in the previous installment will be developed and elucidated.
Now, Malchus is the feminine sphera, and is also referred to by 2 prototypes of Jewish women, Rachel, and Leah. The term Leah is usually associated with Bina as a person, and it represents the way a person is expressed through their thought. Here it says that she's associated with Malchus, with Nukva. Usually it associates her with Bina. The term Rachel is usually associated with Malchus as a person is expressed through their speech. Now, the menorah is associated with Malchus and Rachel. So we're not going to get into Rachel's personality at all. We just use it here as a way to describe, a term to describe Malchus or Nukva. The menorah is associated with Malchus and Rachel, just as speech is to communicate to another person. Malchus conveys divine light to the next stage of creation. Now, Malchus is not actually beneath Zeir Anpin. It is situated behind Zeir Anpin. We had this a few months ago, not that long ago. This is similar to how Chava was originally created. According to one opinion, she was created attached to Adam's back rather than from his rib. Okay, go ahead.
The menorah is the physical manifestation of the parts of Rachel, the Nukva of Zeir Anpin, which are postured back to back. As we have explained previously, Nukva of Zeir Anpin appears as two partsofim, Leah and Rachel, not as Yaakov, just as Yaakov, the personification of Zeir Anpin, had two wives with these names. And just as the main wife of Yaakov was Rachel, the main iteration of the partsuf of Nukva is that of Rachel. When the partsuf of Rachel is initially emanated or built, it is positioned back to back with Zeir Anpin. This corresponds to the Midrashic account of the creation of Adam and Chava, in which they were created as sort of Siamese twin, joined back to back, and had to be sawed apart in order to later turn toward each other and mate.
The correct term is surgically separated.
Sure.
Sawed.
I thought it. Similarly, the partsuf of Rachel, once emanated, must be further developed in order to mate with Zeir Anpin. This is the process of kindling the lamps of the menorah, as will be explained now.
Okay, 4. Now keep in mind that each sphera has sub-sephiras. The 7 branches of the menorah correspond to the 7 lower sub-sephiras within Malchus, of Malchus. As the spheres themselves, they are divided into right, left, and center. From here, it's going to start talking about the 5 states of Gevurah. Today, we're going to focus on the 5 states of Gevurah and the 5 states of Chesed. Compare them and contrast them. The 5 states of Gevurah exist in Das of Malchus. From there, they spread to the 7 lower sub-sephiros of Malchus. This is the same way the 5 states of Chesed spread to Ze'er Anpin. So we know that there are 5 states of Chesed and 5 states of Gevurah. Usually we speak of them as being the Chesed within Chesed, Chesed within Gevurah, Chesed within Tiferes, Chesed within Netzach, and Chesed within Hod. These 5 all gather in Yesod. Then from Yesod, they are then conveyed to Malchus. The 5 states of Gevurah, we're going to read about them. They end up in Malchus. And from there, we had the beginning, they need to be sweetened or tempered. So here we go. The 5 states of Gevurah exist or begin in Das within Malchus, the subsphere Das within Malchus. From there, they spread to the 7 lower subspheres of Malchus. This is the same way the 5 states of Chesed spread to Ze'er Anpin.
Its seven lamps are the physical manifestation of the seven lower spheres of the parts of a brachel, from its chesed to its malchus. These together are called its body, and they are depicted like the three branches of the menorah, left, right, and center. The menorah, of course, had seven branches, but what is meant here is the general subdivision of three branches to the right, three to the left, and the center shaft.
Cool explanation here. The menorah, of course, explains the last line, the three branches of the menorah. The three branches of the menorah is actually a quote from the Torah. Torah says there's the menorah, the center stem, and then it says the three branches on the right and the three branches on the left. So here he refers to all the branches of the menorah by a term from the Torah that refers specifically to three on the right and then three on the left. He talks about the three branches, meaning how it's divided, how the spheres are divided into right, left, and center. Oh, wrong place. 5. Now, as far as the 5 states of Chesed, they spread in Zerampin from Chesed to Hod, the first 5 spheres of Zerampin. They all then coalesce in Yesod, and from Yesod they shine into Malchus.
As is known, the 5 states of Gevurah in Nukva's Das, spread throughout its 7 lower spheres, similar to the way the 5 states of Chesed spread throughout the body of Zeranpin.
Something? Oh, okay. Not here.
Whereas Nukva is constructed mainly out of different states of Gevurah, as we have explained, Zeranpin is constructed out of different states of Chesed.
Okay. Yeah, and we explained all that here. Now, in a lot of the class will focus on the 5 states of Chesed and the 5 states of Gvura. 5 states of Gvura, reside or associate within the 7 branches of the menorah, within the 7 subspheres of Malchus, and therefore the menorah represents Malchus is going to represent the 5 states of Gvura. Number 6, in halacha, there's a concept known as chosam b'sel chosam, a double seal. Certain kosher food needs to have, I'm going to say foods sounds better. Need to have a double seal when being handled by non-Jews, otherwise it may not be eaten. We're worried that it was switched. I looked it up and it's it's not very simple. Different opinions, and in this case, in that case. This expression is borrowed to describe other situations to seal a double seal. For example, Hashem writes our blessings for the year on Rosh Hashanah, but seals it on Yom Kippur. Nowadays we call it sign, but then the official thing is you seal it. For it is not finalized until Hoshana Rabbah, 2 weeks later. These blessings are considered to be guaranteed with a double seal. Yom Kippur and Hoshana Rabbah. In our context, the 5 states of Chesed are first collected in Yesod, the first seal, and then transmitted to Malchus, the second seal. And so I'm like, okay, we made it this far. Then you go to the next one. We made it to first base. Now we're in second base. At this point, we can be sure that Klippa has not siphoned anything from the divine light. So this expression, the seal within a seal.
In Zeranpin, the 5 states of Chesed within its Das spread forth from Chesed to Hod, and the aggregate of their shining forth pools into Yesod, and then the aggregate that shines in Yesod pools into its Malchus. This is the mystical meaning of the seal within the seal, as we have explained in reference to Hoshana Rabbah. The seal within a seal is a halachic concept, wine, etc., which has been touched by idolaters, is considered defiled unless it is sealed with a double seal. The mystical correlate of this concept is the seal given by Hashem on the promise of his beneficence given at the beginning of each year. This seal is seen as Hashem's assurance that he will bestow his beneficence on the Jewish people and by them to all worthy recipients among the other nations and creatures of the world, and not to the forces of evil, that is, the wine will not be contaminated by association with false gods and ideologies. The first seal occurs during the Nila closing prayer of Yom Kippur, when the judgment which began on Rosh Hashanah is signed and sealed. But this judgment is subject to further certification by the holiday of Sukkot, which is also a time of judgment, albeit in a more positive vein. Thus, on each of this holiday, special prayers are recited called Hoshanas, prayers for salvation. The last day of Sukkot is the final closing day of this second judgment period and is called Hoshana Rabbah, the Great Hoshana, after the extra long Hoshana recited on it. In the terminology of Kabbalah, the divine effulgence which flows through the Midos becomes solidified and ready to be transmitted to the world when it reaches the sphere of Yesod, the sphere of drive for transmission, but it is only fully assured of uncontaminated transmission when it reaches the sphere of Malchus, that of full expression.
All right. 7. In the first day of creation, the word or, light, is mentioned 5 times. This is for the 5 states of Chesed. They are called the lights of daylight, of daytime. By contrast, the 5 states of Gvura are called the light of the night. They shine through the bowls of the menorah lights, the 5 states of Gvura. Each light of the menorah has 2 parts. They're bowls that hold the oil, and they're bowls that hold the oil and the parts that make up the candle, namely wick, oil, wick, and flame. No, do that again. Each light of the menorah has 2 parts. One is the bowls that hold the oil, the bowls that hold the oil. How's that? And 2 parts that make up the candle, namely oil, wick, and flame, where make up the light. There you go. These correspond to 2 aspects of each sphere in creation, the lights and the containers. We said that the 5 states of Gvura shine into the 7 subspheres of Malchus. The 5 states of Gvura correspond to the lights, the 5 states of Gvura correspond to the lights, the oil, wick, and flame of the menorah, while the 7 subspheres into which they shine correspond to the bowls of the menorah that hold the oil. You have iris and kalim, lights and containers. So the light is the 5 states of Gvura, and in the metaphor, it is the light, the oil, wick, and flame, and the kalim, the containers, are the subspheres that contain the 5 states of Gvura and correspond to the bowls of the menorah.
The 5 states of Chesed that spread through Zer Anpin are alluded to by the 5 by the 5 times the word light is mentioned in the account of the first day of creation, and are called lights of day. The 5 states of Gevurah that spread through Nukva and shine in it are called the lights of night. These shine by the lamps of the menorah. Thus, the 7 lamps, which are the vessels that hold the burning oil and wicks, manifest the 7 lower sephiros of Nukva, while the 7 lights which burn in them, shining from the fire and flame of the burning wicks inside the lamps, are the lights that shine by the vessels. Every sephira is composed of a light and a vessel. In most contexts, the light is simply the divine energy or creative force, which is a uniform, simple entity that does not change from one sephira to another. What gives the sephira its unique identity is its vessel, which is the context in which the light shines. The standard analogy for this is clear water and is poured into different colored glasses. Although water is colorless, it will appear to assume the colors of the glass it is poured into. Similarly, Hashem is a simple, unified essence, but he acts through various attributes of the spheres, which may be diametrically opposed to one another. For example, Chesed and Gvura. The dichotomy of light and vessel allows one Hashem to assume a multitude of attributes without compromising his unity. We said in most contexts, since a more detailed analysis of this issue leads to the conclusion that the lights also have some a priori identity, even before they enter their respective vessels. But this discussion and its ramifications are beyond the scope of the present exposition.
That last little paragraph is actually parenthetic, not essential to our discussion. As far as Clearwater, I've never been there, but I hope to go someday. Why? Yeah, I like seeing places. The 5 states of Chesed spread from Yesod of Bina into Ze'er Anpin. So now we're talking about the regular spheres of Atzilus, and we have Chachma the first, Bina the second. Within Bina, the subsphera of Yesod near the bottom. The 5 states of Chesed spread from Yesod of Bina into Ze'er Anpin. In simple terms, this means a person's ability to think rationally has an effect on how they feel. And he talks about that quite a bit. But it's not consistent. These states of Chesed, or this light, is not consistent throughout Ze'er Anpin. The beginning of Ze'er Anpin, Bina still maintains a strong influence over the states of Chesed. That is, for Chesed, Gvura, and the first third of Tiferes, which is the intellect, Chachma, Bina, and Das. At this point, the divine light is considered covered. We refer to the divine light as being covered by the influence of Bina. For the bottom 2/3 of Tiferes, the spheres of emotion, the spheres of emotion. So that's the bottom 2/3 of Tiferes and Netzach Hod. The divine light is considered exposed. At this point, influence from Bina has waned, and the divine light takes on the characteristics of the spheres in which it is housed, or housed. Housed? Housed? Okay.
As we have explained elsewhere, the states of Chesed that spread throughout Ze'er Anpin are divided into two categories. As far down as its chest, they are covered within the sheet of the Yesod of Ima, which reaches this far. From its chest downward, however, they are exposed lights. Thus, the exposed lights are the lower two-thirds of the Tiferes of Zeranpin. This is what is meant by from the chest downward, plus the two full lights of Netzach and Hod of Zeranpin. They are thus 2 2/3 exposed light. The 5 states of Chesed and Zeranpin originate in Ima, the partsif of Bina, as will be explained further on. They are transmitted from Ima to Zeranpin via the Yesod of Ima. In psychological terms, this simply means that the love or enthusiasm that expresses itself throughout the entire emotional array originates in the intellect, specifically in Bina, where the insight of Chachma is developed into a full conceptual structure that can elicit an emotional response. But since intellect itself is self-referencing and self-oriented, it is only the yesod of Bina, the drive of the intellect to actualize itself, which is interested in changing reality by eliciting an emotional response. This drive, the yesod of Ima, thus envelops and is the context within which the 5 states of Chesed are manifest in Zeranpin, at least as far as its chest. That is, as far as the first upper third of Tiferes of Zeranpin inclusive. To that point, that is, as they manifest throughout Chesed and Gevura and the beginning of Tiferes, they are enveloped by the consciousness of their source in the intellect. From this point onward, however, this awareness of where the emotional response is coming from is lost, and the emotional response, that is the spreading forth of the 5 states of Chesed through Zeranpin, assumes a life of its own. This is what is meant by calling these states of Gevura revealed or exposed or unsheathed from that point on. The inner experience of Chesed is love, that of Gevura is fear, that of Tiferes is mercy. Love and fear are still abstract enough to retain awareness of their source in the intellect. Their thrust is simple. Their thrust is simply the transmission or withholding of the idea without too much reference to the recipient. Mercy, in contrast, is much more subjective and oriented toward the needs and condition of the intended recipient of the new reality. Therefore, only its first third, or intellectual abstract aspect, recall that every sphere itself subdivides into subspheros, grouped into thirds of intellect, emotion, and drive, can retain the consciousness of where it's coming from. The rest of it is focused on where it's going to.
Put it. In case you forgot what we said, is that the 5 states of Chesed are from Bina. And Bina has an influence for the first two on these 5 states. It continues to have an influence even after it leaves Bina for when it's within Chesed, within Gevura, and within the top third of Tiferes. Then we refer to them as being covered, the light being covered. From then on, the bottom 2/3 of Tiferes and Netzach and Hod, it is referred to as being the light is being exposed. Now, since the light is uncovered, I'm going to write exposed. Since the light is exposed in the lower 2/3 spheres, that's 2/3 of Tiferes, Netzach and Hod, it moves quickly until Yesod. I guess it moved. There is no resistance, or it's not being covered. Maybe it's like the difference between driving in the day and driving at night. Go faster. Yeah, so you're covered, you have to slow down. But when it's exposed, it's able to move quickly.
Since these 2 2/3 lights are divested of any envelope restraining them, they descend rapidly down to Yesod of Zeranpin. In contrast to the deliberate nature of intellect, emotion is characterized as being impetuous and forceful.
Okay. Now, 10. How far does this go? 15. 10. An echo is created when sound waves bounce off a surface. The rebound is much stronger than the initial thrust. An echo is powerful enough to cause an avalanche. In Kabbalah, there's something known as or choser, reflected light. After the light of the 5 states of Chesed reach Yesod, the bottom of Zeranpin, they bounce upward so strongly that they reach Keser of Zeranpin. That's the top. The commentary explains that this means as the light is expressed outward from Zeranpin to Nukva, Zeranpin itself also benefits and develops. That means so it's moving on. It's going on to Nukva, but at the same time, it says that it rebounds or reflects back up more powerful. And what he explains that to mean, what the commentary here explains, is that it means that Zerampin itself, from the experience of being a purveyor of divine light, it also benefits, it grows, it becomes experienced, it develops, it matures.
They then rebound, ascending as reflected light, and spread through the 3 axes of Zeranpin until they reach its Keser. In this way, they cause Zeranpin to grow and mature. By receiving and transmitting the inspiration of Chachma and Bina, Ab and Ima, Zeranpin matures. The flow of positive energy, well rooted in insight into holiness and its intellectual development, serves to make the emotionality of Zeranpin more and more holy and mature in its orientation. The 3 axes here mentioned are the right, left, and middle lines of the subspheres of Zeranpin. Right, Chachma, Chesed, Netzach; left, Bina, Gevura, Hod; center, Keser, Das, Tiferet, and Yesod. And Malchus. When the light of the 5 states of Chesed that originated from Ima reach the Keser of Zeranpin, they influence its will, which in turn sets the tone for the overall focus of the Partzef. The rebound occurs at the level of Yesod, the outward drive for actualization of the emotions. By actualizing itself outwards, the Partzef itself gains and matures internally. This is because self-actualization and propagation promotes self-validation and the remaking of the self in the image one is projecting outwards. One rises to the occasion, so to speak. This is akin to the common expression that by helping someone else or teaching someone else, the helper or teacher gains and grows immensely. As our sages have said, more than the householder helps the pauper helps the householder. And I have learned much from my colleagues, more from my teachers, but most of all from my students. Yes.
Okay,
Always from.
you heard it here first. Confirmed. 11. Now the 5 states of Gvura come from Ze'erampin to Nukva. As we said, they come from the back of Ze'erampin. We mentioned this at the beginning. The lights of Ze'erampin do not come in a pure state. Pieces of the containers of Ze'erampin in which they're contained come with them, as well as the walls of Ze'erampin. So they pick up some kind of residue or sediment or pieces of the containers as the 5 states of Gvura go from Zeir Anpin into Nukva.
A similar process occurs in Nukva when these states of Gevura issue from the back of Zeir Anpin in order to develop Nukva. They cannot issue simply as lights of Gevura. Rather, there issue with them some of the vessels and walls of Zeir Anpin itself, which clothe and envelop them. As will be explained later, these vessels and walls are the sheath of Yesod of Zeir Anpin, which is the context in which these lights of Gevura issue, just as the states of Chesed issued from Ima in the sheath of its Yesod.
12. We said that the states of Chesed that come from Bina are covered in the upper 2 and 1/3 spheres. We said, and exposed and uncovered in the lower 2 and 2/3 spheres. The same is true for the 5 states of Gvura that come from Zeir Anpin into Malchus. Part is covered and part is revealed, not the same amount, but part of it's covered and part of it's revealed. One moment. Okay, go ahead.
It thus follows that just as in Zeir Anpin the states of Chesed are partially covered and partially exposed, so it is with regard to Nukva. The states of Gevura are partially covered and partially exposed, for the vessels of Zeir Anpin partially cover them.
See, from next week we'll start again from here. I want to go a little further today. Then I want to repeat this last week. So we go to 13. The 5 states of Chesed. The 5 states of Chesed come from Yesod of Bina. Yesod of Bina is short and only covers the first 2 1/3 spheres in Zeir Anpin. The 5 states of Gvura, by contrast, come from Yesod of Zeir Anpin. Yesod of Zeir Anpin is long, or longer than the Yesod of Bina, and its cover reaches farther. It reaches 3 full spheres. Chesed, Gvura, and the entire Tiferes. So while the 5 states of Chesed cover 2 1/3 spheres, the states of Gvura, the 5 states of Gvura, are covered for 3 spheres.
Now, with regard to Zeir Anpin, the sheet covering the 5 states of Chesed is the Yesod of Ima. Since Yesod of Ima is short, it ends at Zeir Anpin's chest. In contrast, however, the sheet covering the states of Gevura, spreading through Nukva, originates in the Yesod of Zeir Anpin, which is long, reaching until the bottom of Tiferes of Nukva. The passage from Ima to Zeir Anpin is a change of essence from intellect to emotion. Therefore, as we said, the intellectual actualization drive, Yesod, can ascend only so far as the intellectual aspect, the upper third, of Tiferes of Zeir Anpin. In contrast, the passage from Zeir Anpin to Nukva is just a change of focus from emotion per se to the expression of emotion. Therefore, the actualization drive of Zeir Anpin can extend all the way down to the end of Tiferes of Nukva. In other words, the consciousness of the emotions themselves can remain in the expression consciousness of Nukva as far as its Tiferes, or mercy or empathy. From that point on, the transmission consciousness, Netzach and Hod, take over.
Okay. 14. In other words, we're looking at it from the other side. For the states of Chesed, 2 1/3 spheres are covered, and 2 2/3 are exposed. For the states of Gvura, 3 spheres are covered, and 2 spheres are exposed. for anything that is covered, it means the influence of its source remains strong. Bina for states of Chesed, and Zer Anpin for the states of Gvura.
It thus follows that in Zer Anpin, 2 2/3 of its states of Chesed are exposed, while in Nukva, only the 2 states of Gvura manifest in its Netzach and Hod are exposed. This is one difference between the states of Gevura of Nukva and the states of Chesed of Zer Anpin, the extent to which they are exposed or concealed.
And this brings us to a second difference between the states of Chesed and states of Gvura. In both cases, Yesod is situated directly below Tiferes. We usually think of it as Tiferes, then Netzach, then Hod, then Yesod. In this graphic, in this diagram, Yesod is situated directly below Tiferes. Therefore, in the states of Chesed in Zer Anpin, as soon as they are exposed after 1/3 of Tiferes, they still have 2/3 of a Sphira to descend before they reach Yesod. But for the states of Gvura in Nukva, they aren't exposed until the end of Tiferes. As soon as they are exposed, they enter Yesod immediately. Follow? Why this is so? Whatever. This is the way it is. Now, the Arizal refers to the length of light, to the length the light travels once it's exposed as a descent. So for the states of Chesed, this descent is 2/3 of a Sphira, while for the states of Gvura, the descent is not at all. This is obviously for the exposed, for the light when it's exposed.
The further difference in regarding the height of the point where they become exposed, that is, in Zer Anpin, where they are exposed from the chest down, the descent which the states of Gvura of Chesed traverse is relatively tall. The states of Chesed, once they become exposed, traverse the remaining 2/3 of Tiferes before they reach Yesod of Zer Anpin. The spheres of Netzach and Hod do not add any length to the descent of the Chesed of the states of Chesed, for Yesod is positioned directly under Tiferes, just as the reproductive organ in the lower extremity of the torso in the human body, the legs, which corresponds to Netzach and Hod, being off to the side.
Okay. So that explains how it could be that Yesod is right beneath Tiferes and doesn't have to pass through Netzach. So we'll start here. We'll stop here. And I think next week, I'd like to start a little bit earlier, maybe back to somewhere at the bottom of 721. We'll see. Or I'll have to do it orally. I always have trouble giving over orally what we did the week before. So, okay, everyone. So we'll stop here. God willing, we'll see you all next week. Yeah, next week's the day after Labor Day. So we'll be all set. Take care.